If you're thinking about upgrading to a riding mower, make a path to the Home Depot. Right now, the Poolin Pro 42-inch model's just $11.39. Its 19 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine will power through even the thickest grass, and its rugged reinforced steel cutting deck with 10-year warranty will keep you going and mowing for a very long time. The Poolin Pro 42-inch riding mower, just $11.39, now at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only.
Some choices are hard, like should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.
Everyone to the Supernatural Substation. I couldn't do it. It's your weekly dose of stupidity from me. Anyway, welcome back, as if you were just here, right? You were listening to all kinds of music because Joe doesn't cue things up right. So let's start this over. This is the Supernatural Substation. That means it's Friday night in New Orleans, and it is the 19th of January. That is 1/19/2018 for everybody keeping track. So any of you who were listening last week know that we had like a 3-minute show, and then we played grab ass because everything crashed and we didn't know what to do. So we didn't have a show last week. Right? Dean? Was that last week?
No, that was the week before.
That was the week before. That's Bernadine in the Peanut Gallery. Well, I'm in the Peanut Gallery
I have
tonight.
the schedule. Yeah.
Because I can't remember what happened last week and stuff. It's a long story, but I guarantee you I'm not yet going crazy. I don't think so. Anyway, yes, it's us. So we're back with another great show. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago we had last week we had Lloyd Auerbach. Yes. And he was super duper. I don't usually say that about anybody, but he really was a good show. I mean, he was just sharp, and we should have him back. And he really would make a good guest sometime if any of this that we're planning on doing never comes to fruition. So later tonight, though, at 9:30, we have Jason McLeod, and I understand he is an empath, and I call him in the title a metaphysician because he's into metaphysics. He's into the metaphysical side. He, from his bio, has done some spirit communication with paranormal investigative teams. So we're going to welcome him around 9:30, about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll go off into that. So, but we were chit-chatting before the show about what can we talk about until Jason calls. I don't know, because Eileen is 2 weeks behind. I have no idea. No, I was all business, and then put me on the radio, and I'm like, oh. So anyway, I was bitching about it 2 weeks ago, but not last week, I don't think. But Mardi Gras is here. One of the most reviled times of the year for me. I'm glad it's happening early in the year. It's on February 13th, which I'm glad it's jammed up here in the beginning of the year to get the hell over it. So, because I've said this before, Mardi Gras to me is nothing but an aggravation. Unless it passes right in front of my house and I can go in and use the bathroom and stuff and eat, and whatever, I don't want to deal with it, because what takes you 10 minutes on an average day, even at the height of traffic, to go A to B is going to take you an hour because of stupid parade traffic, And speaking to somebody who was stuck out there at like 4 years old, all the way until I could resist, into my elementary school years and say, no, I don't want to go. It's a pain in the ass for me, but I know there's a bunch of people coming in from out of town. And, you know what? Did it snow by you over the past week? This is weird. Mm-hmm. Let's take an asterisk to the Mardi Gras stuff, because I had to go across the causeway today. Those of you that don't know, it's north of New Orleans, from north of New Orleans to the south shore of New Orleans in Metairie, because I won't, it's not the other bridge, but there was still snow, like piled up in the little, along the side of the drainage thing, or, along the side of the road where it didn't get any sun. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Okay. this is ridiculous. I mean, where was this at Christmas? How nice would it have been, would it have been to look out at Christmas and see, a white Christmas, and then all of this could be over.
Uh-huh.
Do you have pictures? Did you take pictures? That's what we do down here. We take pictures. Look, it's the snow of 2018 or 1963, whatever. Did you take pictures?
No. I think my husband took a few of them, but yesterday I was at my niece's house, and just going up her concrete steps, I almost broke my leg.
Oh my Lord.
I was sliding across. My son grabbed me because I was about to fall. So I went and bought salt because they don't know any better,
That's what we do.
Salt will help you not to break your neck. So
salt or sand. Yeah. Salt or sand. Did it melt it? We saw
kind of crumbles it or makes it, where it's not slick. You can walk.
It absorbs it. That and sand. But I mean, there were two deaths. Actually, two deaths down here, and I don't know if the woman died, but there was a mother with her 8-month-old son driving along West Esplanade, which is divided by a big canal. One way one side, the other way the other side, and trying to get to work, right? And she hit a spot of ice and went into the canal, and her 8-month-old son is dead. She, the last time I checked, was in critical condition, whatever hospital they took her to. And then, another man got killed when he stopped to help a stranded motorist, and another person trying to drive. Now, this was on the high rise, the big high rise bridge over the industrial canal. And he was stopped, I guess, on the upstroke, so the woman couldn't see him right away, and tried to brake. The car wouldn't stop because of the ice. Hit the man and knocked him over the bridge down to the industrial canal embankment, and then pushed the other car too. I don't know why people are out there. I mean, it's just, I don't know why they think they can drive in rain. They can't drive in rain. So ice and snow, we have no frame of reference for that. But the poor man lost his life. And I just want to say, I know what that mother was doing. She was trying to get to a job because she was on her way to work. And she was rushing. So I want to say this for people who will find this later. If you're a boss and you intimidate your employees into coming into work on days like that, when you know they have small children and you threaten them with their jobs and all this other stuff, then you're an asshole. And all that karma, that little boy didn't have to die if she wouldn't have had to go to work. Why would she go to work on a day like that?
I know my husband had a class he was supposed to take, and the intersection where he had to go under the overpass is I-49 and I-10. Mm-hmm. He had called in and said, it's closed right there. We can't pass. How am I supposed to get across I-10? And she's like, well, you have to try. He's like, no, I'm telling you right now, I'm not going. If you want to fire me, fire me. I'm not going to risk my life, because he walked on our street with his feet and was sliding all over. So he knew his truck would not make it all the way to Lafayette. Yeah. I mean, that's 30 minutes away.
I know. Yeah.
So he didn't go. And you know what?
The police telling people stay off the damn road.
2 people had actually made it to the class, and the instructors didn't show up. So even if he'd have went, he'd have to come all the way back on icy roads.
So, yes. So when I used to work, I had bosses like that, and you all know who you are, and you're all still on my list. And that baby would be alive if somebody would have told that woman, just stay home with your kid, instead of making her feel either then or before that, if she didn't show up, she wouldn't have a job, and to me, that puts you down on the lowest rung of hell if you're going to do that, because that's putting money in your pocket. So now a baby's dead. And who knows how many other situations where there were deaths in this storm. It wasn't something like that. Trying to get to work. Screw your work. Screw your work. So anyway, on a lighter note, we're moving back onto my bar. I was just talking about This is Mardi Gras, and everybody goes, oh, Mardi Gras, and they, the boobs on Bourbon Street, and the beer, and the beads, and all this other stuff. But there's a whole other side to Mardi Gras that people don't think about. Mardi Gras is old. I believe it first, I'd have to check my facts, but or the date, 1872, I think is the first parades, public parades to do. They had the balls of the mystic organizations, the crews, the KREWEs. They already had those as society balls, but then they began parading publicly. And since that time, obviously, New Orleans is a very magical city, and it's got superstition and myths and lore associated with Mardi Gras. And it occurred to me just now, it was like, whoa, I drank some coffee and I was like, I can think again, except I don't know what weekend was last weekend. But, there are some stories that are, to do with Mardi Gras. Like I was saying to you, Bernadine, they have haunted parades that are haunted, where people will see, crew members that have passed on will be standing next to them on the float. And this is like before they got drunk and everything, that actually see people who had passed away. We had the bead lady, the infamous bead lady of Mardi Gras. She was like beads all the time, and she was a real person. And I wrote a story about her, about encounters when she was, in other words, before she entered, like, the myth or the legend, the lore of New Orleans, and I got chewed out by some guy who, he's a historian, and he said, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I was like, well, it's fiction. Do you know the meaning of the word fiction based on a real story? But he apparently didn't. But she lived for so long that people thought it was almost like Marie Laveau. They thought she was still alive 200 years later. Well, they kept seeing her. And so after she did pass, people were seeing her. So I wrote a particular story about that, but I wrote some other, things about her, factoids and stuff. So we can talk about her. Mardi Gras Dens, a cousin of mine, does a parade. And when I say does, he designs it. He's the artistic designer of the crew of Mid-City. And that den, they call it a den. It's a warehouse. That particular den is haunted because Mid-City is one of the old, they've been around like 80-something years. And they're one of the oldest crews ever. And the actual frames of the floats are still really the original, not the back in the 1930s, but like going into the 50s and 60s. They just, they continue to redo the outside to shore it up on the inside. But basically it's a wooden structure on wheels. So, but I had some encounters in that den. Knowing him, it's probably not all Mardi Gras people or anything like that, but like I was telling you, there was a ghost that haunted there, and it was from another crew. As a matter of fact, a guy that fell off of a float and was killed, and somehow or other his costume got into the Mid-City Den, and so I'll tell you about those experiences. I mean, I think people don't stop to think it, but it can be creepy. And there's different ghost stories, real life ghost stories. People encounter sometimes a lot of the ghosts and things that that ghost tours take people, and tell people about as they walk through the city. People encounter those ghosts and spirits as well, and they're going to haunted places like Lafitte's Bar and the bars and everything now in St. Anne, the dungeon and all that. So that they're in New Orleans, it's like everything has a story attached, and everything is underlined by please be careful, because we have the highest per capita crime rate in the country. It's a shithole. Let's use that term.
It's so hard to watch the surroundings there, especially during Mardi Gras.
Oh, it's impossible. If you don't like bodily contact, don't go down there.
Right.
Right. And, we've talked about this before. And that's another thing, there have been some police that have died too. And there's some stories of them, being cited and all. But the police, right about now, they're preparing. But I think parades kick off on the 26th, actually, officially. So from the 26th of January, maybe a little bit before that, until like the 14th of February, these men and women are working, like they're sleeping once every 2 days, okay? And by the time they get to that weekend, right before Mardi Gras, which is really the big weekend, they're in no mood. They are in no mood. A mutual friend of ours, I think you might know her as a queen. Do you know who I'm talking about? You can write me a personal message and I'll tell you. But anyway, she's apparently, she's a well-known Mardi Gras whore. Okay, I hate to say it, but and she'll call herself that. Okay, but she's maybe that's not the right word. She's an enthusiast. Okay, to the point where, so she was down Carrollton, I think, seeing some parade, Bacchus, maybe. I don't know. It was one of the day parades on that Sunday before. And she parked illegally, and she had gotten across, now this is from her mouth, right? So she had gotten across the barricade once and for beads, was running alongside of the float, and a policeman grabbed her and put her behind the barricade and said, if I see you out here again, I'm going to arrest you, And that means, and when they tell you that at Mardi Gras, you're going to be sitting in a paddy wagon, the old-fashioned paddy wagon. This is not your limo van type situation. It's you and a bunch of other criminals, probably some drunks who have thrown up, and they don't leave with that wagon until it's full. Okay, because right. It's difficult to get through, to bring them to OPP anyway. And you're going to OPP, lockup, central lockup. But anyway, she did it twice, and he literally grabbed her and was like, get back. And I can't believe you grabbed me. I can't believe you did wrong. I just can't believe it. I'm like, sleep that man. I said, you're lucky you didn't end up, whatever. And then she got a ticket. She got a ticket for parking in the same spot. She left, came back, parked in the same spot. Never occurred to anybody why that spot's vacant. Okay, because if you park there, you'll get a ticket. So, and was criticizing the New Orleans Police Department. Okay, not our problem, dude, most of the year. But a cop who's been working like 2 weeks straight, all details, all night long, is not the one that you want to, that you really want to tangle with on the Sunday night before Mardi Gras. Because there is more than a 50% chance that you will end up in jail, because they're just not going to listen to you. You can't tell them your friend is on the float. No, you want to do that, you can go in Metairie, which is Metairie's in Jefferson Parish. They have parades over there too, but you can't show your boobs over there because it's family parades. But you want to run along and risk your life under these, these gargantuan floats, go ahead. For beads. Listen, you can buy these beads all year long down here. Okay, that's another thing. If y'all come down here and you're paying these exorbitant prices in the French Quarter, just Google, Mardi Gras supplies. Dollar Tree has Mardi Gras beads. Like $1 for, a gross or whatever. Find a Mardi Gras supplier that's not some Arab store down in, or, Arab or Asian tourist trap down in the French Quarters to, charging you $10 for a pair of beads. You can go anywhere. And because St. Patrick's Day comes up, you can get all the stuff for that too. And the St. Joseph Italian American Parade, right? And
watch your children, please.
Don't bring your children.
We had a child run over last year.
Yes. And that happens almost every year these days. That was over there by you, right?
Yeah.
Over in Southwest. That's right. And watch them, because they go for those beads and they're not watching what they're doing. And, the next thing you know, the kid's under the float. That's a horrible way to die. So, but seriously, watch yourselves. I would say everybody, I can be the half grumpy, half full, whatever, but if you have children and you really want to enjoy it, you want to see Mardi Gras, and you haven't been from here, start with Metairie. Stay out of New Orleans, because, invariably you've got to park on these side streets, and, every neighborhood backs up to a crime neighborhood, and they're not in there necessarily in the neighborhoods. They're on the route, because I guarantee you, Bacchus on that Sunday, and that's something we can talk about. It's almost like a curse on Bacchus. Every year something happens. They either get a shooting, a stabbing. One year it was 6 people got shot just watching the parade. And I hate to say, tell you these terrible things, but I don't want you to come down here and lose your life, right? For Mardi Gras, right? For this stupid, really stupid crap, it's not worth risking your children, risking your life and all. And if you don't have a plan that puts you close to the crowds and all this, don't go down there. It's, it's more than a bacchanalia. It's just complete. And the police can't control everyone. They're mostly concentrating on the quarter. They've got the state police now. They're the ones that wear the smoky hats, like Smokey the Bear. Do not screw with them, with the state police of Louisiana. That's similar to the ones of Mississippi. You don't want to screw with them, okay? And the other one.
If your children has never seen porn, they will see it in New Orleans.
They will see it in New Orleans. Period.
Broad daylight.
Yeah, I mean, broad daylight, middle of the night. You've got it there. They're up there on the balcony. It's like, ain't nowhere to pee either. Ain't nowhere to pee either for your children or you. And do not take. I always get freaked out about people who come down and visit, and I've been in the quarter with you, but they bring their kids and then they put them in strollers, which means they're close to ground level. They're close to all of this
nastiness.
Yeah, and there's at least, I'm telling you, there's going to be at least 3 feet of trash that you're walking through at any given time. When I went down there in the 70s, and whatever pair of jeans that I would go walk through that crap with, I'd throw away because they just couldn't be saved, especially bell bottoms. I mean, you're like
dragging the ground.
That was the times when I could be talked into it. But there were other things that drew me. But yeah, seriously, it's a mix of it's
Hi, this is
fear
Jason.
and
Thanks for calling. I'm not available to take your call. Please leave a message. Thank you.
It's a metaphysical moment.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hello.
Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hey. Oh, it's really him. I thought I was going to leave a message. Hello, Jason. I'm sorry. This is Eileen Castanio, and I'm the co-host with Bernadine LeBlanc. And we were just talking a little bit about Mardi Gras before you got on, but we're happy to have you. so don't mind us. So are you there? I think we lost him.
Yeah, I heard it drop.
Oh, Lord.
There we go. You back?
I'm here.
It's metaphysical. I'm telling you. It's just metaphysical. What's that? Oh, well, anyway, yes. Let me introduce you. Our guest tonight is Jason McLeod. We did a little bit of an introduction. I'm hoping that I'm saying your name right.
McLeod, actually.
McLeod, yeah, I was going to say the Outlander version. It is McLeod, which is good. I know a little bit of that. And we're going to have you just talk a little bit about yourself. Dean lined you up, and, I had the bio. I read a little bit about you, but we'd like to have our guests introduce themselves. So why don't you do that and tell us all about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name's Jason McLeod, and I began my early career in paranormal investigation just out of high school under the tutelage and supervision of ed-lorraine-warren. And being from Connecticut, it was such a small town, so the synchronicity involved in meeting them and actually working for and with them, and then actually going on cases with them was quite interesting, and that's something I usually talk about. But anyway, I was working with the Warrens, and I wanted so badly to experience seeing a ghost, clairvoyance. But instead, as Lorraine told me, she said, the longer you're involved in cases of this nature, the more your sensitivities will increase, and we'll see what those sensitivities become. And it turned out to be empathy. And where I picked up the overwhelming grief and sadness that this one woman who was disembodied in her natural spirit body felt. And that changed my life completely, much more so than it would have if I had seen her. And it changed my life so completely that I really developed an instant compassion for these people who've left their bodies, who have remained what the Warrens called earthbound. And that started me down this entire path toward basically helping families deal with, not only the inhuman diabolical spirits that are attempting to ruin their lives, but more importantly, the human spirits that are remaining earthbound, that are usually family members or just people that are in the house that they move into, and helping them cross over properly, and also bringing resolution. So that's my purpose. Is it's twofold, really. Like I said, to help them with inhuman negative spirits, and as well as human negative spirits, but mostly to help the others who are not negative. Well, even if they are, help them cross over and end the whole haunting in the first place, versus just trying to get photos or pictures and EMPs and things like that.
EVPs, yeah.
EVPs.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. I was reading your bio. I didn't know that you worked with the Warrens. How old were you when you started working with them?
It was 1990, so I was 22, actually. I just got out of, I was in between my first and second college year.
Wow.
So took a year and a half off. And yeah, would you like to hear the synchronicity involved with that?
Yes, I definitely do. I kind of thought we were more on the metaphysical, but I like I said, I didn't know you worked with them. So I'd love to hear your experiences with them. And
yeah, it's an interesting story for sure. So basically, I had read The Demonologist when I was 18 years old, as a senior in high school in Westport, Connecticut, and it was their most terrifying compilation of cases. And I wasn't ready to get involved and try to seek them out and get involved. I'd always believed as a young child that I was connected to my creator, and that all life was part of an intelligent design, and that we were all part of this same force or field. And after I'd read these stories contained in The Demonologist, I was quite concerned for the people who were experiencing these things. I had never once felt afraid or threatened, even before I even met them. But basically, that was 86. So it was 1990. I was with my friend Lou in his car. He was a former Army combat medic, and was with the rank of captain, and was a current paramedic in the Norwalk, Connecticut EMS system. And we're in the car and we're listening to the radio, and they were talking about the 3 men and a baby ghostly image of the boy standing behind the curtain with the high-powered rifle in the editing phase. And I turned to Lou after listening to that whole thing, and I said, that would be so cool to work with them. And he said, yeah, no kidding. The very next day, he called me and said, you aren't going to believe who just called me. I asked who, and he said, Ed Warren. I was like, what? Come on. It turns out that Ed was seeking a medic for their team, so he called the chief of EMS in Norwalk, because it was the closest EMS system, and they recommended Lou because of his combat experience. So I attribute that to the universal law of intention. That'd be so cool to work with them. Yeah, no kidding. And then the universal law of conscious manifestation, basically saying, here you go. So Lou got to go to their Monday night meeting and meet them, and he told Lorraine all about this synchronicity. And of course, she knows all about synchronicities. There are no accidents. So she encouraged him to invite me the next Monday night. And of course, I did quickly accept that invitation. So when I first met Lorraine, she asked me 3 very pointed questions. And the first was, how strong is your faith, honey? And I said, well, I have immense faith. I believe that I and the Father are one, as are we all. And why do you want to get involved in work of this nature? And I explained I read The Demonologist, and I was concerned about these families. So she asked, so it's a calling then? And I said, I believe it is. So what's fascinating is that they sent Lou and I on our first case alone the very next night, which was a Tuesday night, representing the Warrens, and that we had the most profound experience on our very first case. And that completely hooked me and scared Lou about 50% out the door completely. And that's where that all led. So I began my career working with the Warrens, which was fascinating and incredible now that I think about it, and having the opportunity to work with them, who were the pioneers of the whole modern ghost investigation movement, that none of these shows would exist and half of the movies wouldn't exist if it weren't for their effort and expertise. And Ed took me on several cases, demonic cases and so forth, and I'd never felt threatened. I've always known I was protected, but I was never going to go point my finger at anything and stick the finger in the hornet's nest type of thing. But it was a case we had all together in Vermont that completely changed my life, and that's where I had my empathic experience. And really briefly, it was a woman who was going into labor, being rushed to the midwife by horse and carriage, and the wagon or the carriage flipped. The wheel went over the edge of this ridge, and the whole thing tumbled down the ridge into the gully, and both the mother and the baby lost their lives. And so she, as well as about 6 other spirits, were on that property that were, causing disturbances for the family involved, who actually fled the house because they couldn't take it anymore. And when we were in the field together, taking photographs and just trying to discern what was going on, Lorraine, reaching out, she's being a light trance medium, trying to reach out and feel what was going on. I felt really compelled to, I was the last one in the other group to start heading back to the house. We were in this big cornfield, and I turned around, and I didn't see anything with my physical eyes, but I felt that this woman was there. Her name was Priscilla. And I just said, "Come back to the house with us," waving to her. Now, I couldn't see her, but to her, I believe she said, "He can see me." All right. And we made a connection that way, quantum entanglement and everything. So while we were in the house and we were initiating communication, and Lorraine was seeing spirits, and Andy Thompson, who's a good friend of mine to this day, who was one of the original Warren investigators, who was actually one of the people invited to be on Ghost Adventures but declined. He was seeing them, and I just said, "I want to see so badly. I want to see." And all of a sudden, as the tables literally bounced, this huge oak dining table, it was a big Amish table in this house, was just bouncing on all fours like a basketball. And my jaw dropped and tears just streamed out of my eyes. And I go, "Lorraine, the sadness," and I just completely couldn't control my tears from pouring down my face, and just overcome by that grief. And that changed my life, like I said, because it made me feel for these people who, to her, she'd lost her child. So I'm sure she was looking for her child. Where's my baby? Where is my baby? Now, the conscious awareness that was going to experience its particular lifetime or brief sojourn into physicality either never came down and fused with the body of the baby, or it crossed over immediately. In either case, there was no baby to be found. So she was, imagine the grief, going to go give birth, and then all of a sudden your life is cut short. And her last thought was getting back to the house. So that's instantly where she went, trying to find her child. So anyway, that's how it all began. And I worked on about I'd have to count them all, but all the cases that I worked on with them. But it's when I moved out to Washington State to continue my college education. I switched schools. There was a great creative writing program out in Eastern Washington University. And I met the Warrens while I was at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I wrote a column called Hauntings for the school paper about all the cases that we were experiencing. So they're all available if people want to start, to look for those. But actually posted some on my Dark Siege website. But so I'd gone out to Washington State. I picked up my column there, and because the school got wind of the fact that I wrote the column for Sacred Heart, and we'd actually flown the Warrens out for their college presentation, and went around Cheney and Spokane, Washington, and checked out all the local haunted spots and so forth. And such a huge interest in that from the local community. I started the Northwest Society for Paranormal Research to mirror their New England Society. I started teaching classes out there, which was really interesting. And I had incredible guest speakers. But I met 2 incredible women who were, I call them my psychic moms, because they were, older, but they were just incredible women, one of which owned a crystal store. And they really took me under their wing and helped expand my spirituality. I approached everything from a Catholic perspective, working with the Warrens, even though I believe that we were all connected in profound ways, before I ever met them. But it was this switch, because there was this catalyst, which was actually going to be my 3rd book. It's going to be called Rage in Rathdrum, which is Rathdrum, Idaho. It was a case that the Warrens called me to investigate for them on their behalf, because I was only right across the border, Eastern Washington into Idaho. That really helped switch gears, because I approached this case like I did all the others through the Catholic perspective. And because there was nothing of a negative demonic nature there, it didn't work. Obviously, the sufumigation, which is a Catholic blessing of places and so forth, didn't work. There were American Indian spirits there. There was a cult situation going on all in that area. But so we handled everything with these two women I'm referring to, one of which is my good friend Valerie Crisp. And we handled everything by trying to recognizing the traditions of the American Indians that were there, and also a scientist by the name of Bruce who helped solve this case. But from that point on, and the experiences that I had working with my friends Barbara and Valerie out in Washington, and Bruce, the scientist, I had a series of absolutely profound metaphysical and spiritual encounters and activations. And I can get into all that in detail too if you want to, but just to wrap this introduction up, which is kind of lengthy, I'm sorry. Basically, I started getting inundated with handwritten letters, because this is before the internet, from people who were having haunting situations going on inside their homes, mostly like family members who'd been, buried, but came right back to the house and were there in their spirit bodies. So I was starting to experience right off the bat, the very first case, I just picked up a name of the individual. Well, I don't know if you want to go into that or not, but so that's where all that led to. And briefly, after I'd graduated, I came back to Connecticut, which is where my home was. And that's when I got involved in this case that I wrote about, which was my debut novel called Dark Siege, A Connecticut Family's Nightmare. And it was the most terrifying experience that I'd ever been involved in personally as a lead investigator. And I decided I was never going to talk about that case. The family never wanted any recognition whatsoever, because it came back after them a second time in the sequel I wrote about called Dark Siege 2, The Nightmare Returns. And I decided, this is back in 2012, when I was seeing that there were so many paranormal investigation groups out there on Facebook, and so many different, so many people using Ouija boards. The more and more people using Ouija boards, and more investigation teams using Ouija boards. And I said, you people are out of your minds, and this is why this Dark Siege case spiraled out of control, is because the teenage boys went and bought a Ouija board to communicate with the spirit that the 6-year-old sister brought home with her from the cemetery. And I talked to the family, and they said, just change our names and likenesses, and if it will help one family avoid what we experienced, by all means, reveal the story exactly as it happened. So I used my creative writing skills, that's what I got my bachelor's in, to recreate this case in a cinematic true crime novel, Stephen King-esque horror fiction format, but it's absolutely all authentic and true. And then it's the analysis section at the end, which is completely unique, which is the last 100 pages. It's 467 pages. The last 100 pages was a detailed chapter analysis where I explained everything that we just talked about, how I met the Warrens and my first several cases working with them, but more importantly, what the family did right and wrong every step of the way in each chapter, and comparing the activity in each chapter to other very well documented cases, because a lot of times the MO of these spirits is exactly the same, which is to terrorize and isolate and, to cause as much fear to be emitted as possible. But then I discussed how love is the greatest power and the highest frequency of them all, and it will absolutely raise the vibration of your own auric field and your home and your living spaces, and repel these negative entities. So I really explained the science and spirituality behind the paranormal through the analysis section, through quantum physics and the universal laws. And then after those books were released and I was doing all these big paranormal conventions, I got on Coast to Coast AM twice because of these books, and Bishop James Long endorsed them as required reading for his demonology class, because it's an authentic case of demonic possession that actually took place. But I decided after I wrote the third book in a series, which is going to be the Rage and Rathdrum case, that I would write Our Journey Home, the original title was going to be Our Journey Home, Guiding Spirits into the Light, but I decided to totally switch gears and provide a how-to manual, pretty much. It's called Our Journey Home, the Handbook for the Transition, which is about, which is intended for people who are, in their last, portion of their life and who are, going to be transitioning soon, whether they're in hospice or in the hospital or, even reading it at home. But it's really for everybody, because we're all going to do it. We're all going to leave our body, and it's nothing to fear and it's nothing to dread, and it's completely natural. But nobody's ever provided any kind of information for the people, for the masses, about what to expect and how we are fields of awareness without form, temporarily taking on a physical body to experience this very narrow band of frequencies we call reality. And that we will be vacating the body, and when we do, we'll be free of all of the illness or disease or malfunction that is integral to the body, and be completely free of that, and experience a level of connection and connectedness that we can't even describe while embodied. So that's the long intro.
That's a long intro. No, but that was a great intro.
Yeah.
Two things. I'm glad that you mentioned, I'd love to hear more about the case that you mentioned in Connecticut. But Bernadine and I, which you might not be aware, when we do some conferences, we do mainly one, but we're branching out. We had other obligations that have kept us in the South, but that's our focus, the dangers of this, this paranormal exploration that it just boomed out of control after, the advent of ghost hunters. Now, you're right, too, in saying, and we say this all the time, that there was that first vanguard that included the Warrens and Hans Holzer and, that group that basically, broke surface back in like the 60s, 70s. And, then it took sort of a left turn at ESPN, psychic study and all that other stuff. But there's a lot of people out there who are good, well-intentioned people, but they don't have any idea what they're doing. They don't have any idea what they're dealing with. A lot of them don't believe in it. So I don't know why they're out there trying to prove something they don't believe. So we talk frequently on how dangerous it can be, to not only use the Ouija board, but other forms of divination or, provoking, which, I kind of think if you'd have made Ghost Adventures, you'd have had a problem with that, provoking in haunted environments, because I really think that he's like, Zach Bagans is really like the bass note on that. I mean, it's the default because, he had to do something different from Ghost Hunters, I guess. But I wanted you to just talk just very briefly, and then I'm going to let Dean, I know Dina has some questions about when you mentioned the Catholic perspective in dealing with, these cases of hauntings, etc. So what do you mean by the Catholic perspective? I'm Catholic, so I just kind of wanted you to give me your point of view.
We would basically, through prayer, especially, of course, the 23rd Psalm and the Our Father and the Hail Mary and things like that for protection should things start to go awry. The most important thing is that the Warrens, that my experience working with the Warrens, which is the only thing I can talk about directly is because it was my experience working with them, is that, you had to be very careful not to start provoking anything in the house, especially when they could be affecting the family members, especially children. So the Warrens would always go in and observe, and they would try to disprove a haunting before they would try to prove it. They would try to rule everything out, and they would attribute everything to being, something that is not of supernatural origin. But when the activity presented itself with the obvious signs that there's something of an intelligent nature there, what's something called Warrens called a soul mind, that was a very negative of a negative nature and started to exhibit those classic signs, then, you'd be very cautious and treading, very carefully while we're there with the family members and so forth. Many times they would be asked to leave so we can all, basically explore this situation. And Ed would often provoke through religious provocation to try to determine whether or not it actually was something of a demonic nature. And we had to be very careful. He had to be very careful only to have the most serious people with them. They were very, very particular about who they would allow on cases and so forth. But so we would go in and basically, I'll give you one example, is I was involved in a case right in Connecticut, and I had my grandmother's blessed rosary beads with me. And they were in my pocket just as an extra form of protection because it was the early part of my career, I guess you would call it. And there was a black form on the stairs. That's what Donna was seeing and Andy was seeing. And I couldn't see it because I wasn't clairvoyant then. But they said this form was standing on the stairs and it was darker than blackness. And I didn't feel afraid, but I pulled these rosary beads out of my jeans pocket and put them in my palm, and they were huge, to try to maneuver them all the beads in my palm just to hold them. But apparently just pulling them out of my pocket, this thing went right up to me. And he said, "Jason, what did you do?" And he said, "He has rosary beads." He's like, "Put them away quick." Right. And I'm like, then I was frightened because I was like, oh God, so I was putting them, trying to, get them in my palm and stick them in my pocket. And the second that I did, this thing went right back up onto the stairs. And when we met the next class on Monday night, I asked Ed, well, what's the situation here? What would have happened? He said, it was your way of he said it could have determined that I was challenging it by brandishing these rosary beads. Religious provocation, right? Me against you, my faith against yours, or whatever. But it, Ed said it could have choked you or burned you or strangled you or all these, things. And I just said, I don't think so. I think I'm so well protected that nothing will happen. I mean, that's definitely been confirmed through the years, through many, many people that I've talked to. But so what we would do, and this case that I'm referring to about my own case that you said you'd like to learn more about, if you want to jot it down or put it up on a screen or whatever, it's called Dark Siege, Darksiege, and the subtitle is A Connecticut Family's Nightmare. And I've like 172 reviews, and they're almost all 5 stars, and it's a great read. It really is a great read, and it got me on Coast to Coast twice. But I recreated this case exactly as it happened to this family from the very beginning, as the mother and daughter were driving by Union Cemetery, which is one of the most haunted in all of New England, just before Halloween in '93, all the way until the end, involving a Catholic bishop from Boston. And anyway, so during that case, I performed what's called sufumigation, which is the blessing of places, using frankincense and myrrh, and the 23rd Psalm, and the Our Father, and the Hail Mary, white blessed candles, flooding the house with frankincense and myrrh. And it's the equivalent of what people do when they smudge or use sandalwood and so forth. It's all the same. You're raising the vibration, and everything is vibration. Right? If you're raising the vibration to the highest level it can be, especially through prayer, but with this high frequency smoke, it is making it inhospitable for something of a negative nature. The same way we would be repelled by the smell of a skunk. Negative energies are repelled by the scent. You know all that, but I don't know how much the listeners know. But so that's where that all basically began. So when we had this case in Idaho, the family was experiencing all kinds of things, and we performed the sufumigation in the house. I did with the help of a friend who was a classmate of mine, Randy, and he's actually going to be portrayed as himself in the book too. He's now a police officer. But every time we entered a room, the family left. Every time we'd enter a new room to repeat the whole process, which is repeating the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the 23rd Psalm 3 times each in succession, as well as having the candle lit and burning the incense. Every time we crossed the threshold into another room, the phone would ring 3 times. And it's meant as a distraction, but so there was definitely something negative there, and Ed would attribute that to being a mockery of the Trinity, but the family actually, there's a whole cult situation in that whole area. Rathdrum, Idaho is a very, very serious area with regard to that type of stuff. But there were also, the place was loaded with Native American Indian spirits and kids and spirits of kids that were sacrificed and all. It was just crazy, incredibly awful. But it wasn't anything that they were dealing with, like a oppression, infestation or oppression, and certainly not a possession type of situation. But it was pretty fascinating.
Dean, I know you have some questions, so I wanted to bring you in.
Yes, I was watching one of your YouTube interviews, and you were mentioning that souls don't die, that nobody dies, our souls move on, but some choose to stay here depending on their addictions. And sorry, my husband's trying to talk to me while I'm on air.
I was wondering what was going on. Husbands.
Yeah. Anyway, let me get back to my train of thought.
Shane, get out of there.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Jason.
Where was I? Anyway.
You were talking about his YouTube video, and
the souls. Some souls decide, they don't want to go into their light or vortex or whatever they see, because of their addictions or how they died, how they may be judged on the other side. So they decide to stay here, and I guess bother people. But my grandmother used to see spirits and she was 4 years old. And I would bring a few of my clients there that were like grief stricken from their loved one's death, and they just couldn't move past it for years, and she would actually, it was like a process. I'd have to give her the name of the person and their birth date. That's all she needed. And she would call up on the big angel. She would say rosaries and prayers for people. She didn't watch like ghost hunters and stuff on TV. She didn't know any of that. She didn't have the internet. She would do I forgot the name of it for people. It's a like a prayer session for people. I forgot the name of it. But she would call upon the big angel, which she said was bigger than the door. Like the big angel would have to, crouch down to come in, but she would actually have to schedule with the big angel for the person that she was to bring to, for the client to speak to their loved one. Because she said on the other side, once we cross over, that everyone has a job. So that's why it had to be scheduled. So she would tell me what time to bring the client. I would bring them, and I'd have my equipment in the middle of the floor. So when she would say, they're entering, the big angel would just drop them off and say, look, you have 45 minutes and then I'll be back to pick them up. Well, I'm like, okay. So I actually have on EVP her speaking, to the spirit, asking the questions and the spirit answering her, and her relaying the question or answer back to the loved one. And our EMFs and things would go off when she'd say they were crossing the floor, and I know a lot of scientists, and we've recently had one on say, it's the people's energy, like our energy, that our equipment is picking up. And it's not. If it's in the middle of the floor and everyone's sitting and it's not going off, but only when she's saying that the spirit's crossing the equipment, that's kind of, and then we're picking it up on EVP also is good evidence for me. But that's how she would say that we had to schedule the appointments for. So I don't know if that part of, life and death.
Do you have to schedule appointments, Jason?
No,
I mean, have you heard of the big angel?
I'm sorry.
And I know you speak about the spirits that stay earthbound. But on the other side, do you know that part of it?
Well, wait a minute. Before you answer, we had Lloyd Auerbach last week on, and he is the one that said that. I mean, he's obviously the parapsychologist and the scientist point of view.
Yeah.
And so he basically said that we are having subjective experiences of our own energy instead of experiences, exterior experiences with objectively real entities, which I believe. I know because I've seen it, and I don't, not in passing, but I've seen it in practice and everything. So I think, Dean, what you're saying is there a hierarchy? Is there, some sort of a, like, I guess, a big angel tells another angel, or, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the energy question too, or the idea that Auerbach wrote?
That's a great series of thought and questions. So I believe we are infinite fields of awareness temporarily animating a physical body, that we're all sparks cast off from the light of the transcendent God. And I'm talking about the true creator of the universe, the nameless God of the total creator of this universe. And
I want to ask you about that after you're finished. I want to ask you about that.
We've been presented with, a myriad of deities and demigods and gurus and masters and so forth, and who knows where they all came from. But I don't believe in the bloodthirsty, judgmental, jealous God that's been presented to us.
Bingo, in the Old Testament. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Don't believe in that at all. And it's just a control mechanism. And
well, it's the
like
Jewish
I say
God.
At the beginning of my book, I said at the beginning of my book, we've been completely, we haven't been misled. Well, we have been misled, because if we are individuated aspects of the totality of the creator, or as Nikola Tesla said, which is somebody I quote in my book, we are, infinite awareness and awareness of itself. And we are aspects of the creator cast off from the creator to experience, so the creator can experience our experience. And if we are all children of this transcendent God who are completely loved and completely protected at all times, how can a parent, I'm not a parent, but I don't know how a parent could not love their child unconditionally, and how could any parent send their child into any sort of mythological Hades or hell situation for expressing themselves here in physicality, in their own uniqueness, and not forgive them and hope that they make better decisions the next time. I just don't believe in the whole hell and mythological Hades situation, simply because of the hundreds of spirits that I've interacted with and all the cases that I've worked on with the Warrens. I do believe in the Gnostics, and that they're in the material presented in the Nag Hammadi texts that have been found, who have described this all-pervasive force they call the Demiurge, or the Lord Archon, who controls or overlays this planet, and whose minions, described as the jinn and the demons and the watchers and the flyers, who are all part of this one and the same force, who are trying to basically sabotage humanity and siphon all the fear energy off of us and so forth as a control mechanism, which is where I believe all of these organized religions have come from, by the way. Because, as the Warrens said, they've witnessed Catholic priests successfully exorcising demons using Catholic and Christian rituals. They've witnessed Japanese Shinto priests doing it their way, and shamans doing it their way, and rabbis doing it their way, and spiritualists doing it their way. To me, prayer and intention are all one and the same. And if you are of the belief and that you are connected to your creator permanently, and that you understand that you are an aspect of that creator, fully empowered. That's why I always say the kingdom of heaven is within. And that's the way I've always believed when I was a young man. And I said, I and the Father are one. And a lot of these major scriptures or sayings or bits of knowledge, I believe, that are seeded through a lot of these organized religions as the main concepts, which are the most pivotal to understand. And a lot of the rest is just a bunch of control mechanisms to keep everybody feeling less than and less powerful than they really are, and little me and poor me and worthless sinner, insignificant and unimportant, compared to what I believe and what my books are. This new book is meant to do is to empower everybody and help them understand their divine nature and their divine potential. Because if we're all aspects of the Creator, what does one cell divided away from the host cell become? It becomes just like the host cell, always, right? So if we're all, I call it the God spark. If God is the brilliant, luminous, glorious sun, and we're all sparks cast off from that sun, essentially, yes, in that regard, we are all one, because we're all coming from the one source, right? In a spiritual nature. And when we come here to experience temporary physicality, which quantum physics has proven that it's not even in any way physical, just like your friend, the scientist that was on the show, he's trying to describe what's going on through Newtonian physics, when this is really a quantum level situation where we are fields of formless awareness, who've taken on a physical form to experience this reality. And I liken the physical body to a space suit, right? Which an astronaut needs to wear to experience that dimension or that situation, or a deep sea diving suit that is needed to explore that dimension. We need this physical body so that we can experience this dense level of reality. And it really isn't even physical at all. Quantum physics has turned that whole notion that we live in a physical world on its ear. We're under the illusion that it's physical, but the human perception, we can only perceive 0.005% of the matter, space, and energy in the universe, and only a tiny fraction of that, which is visible light. So we're blind as a bat, and we can see less, we can perceive less than 1% of 1% that's all around us, yet we say, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist, which goes back to the Ouija board situation. Oh, nothing happened. Well, how do you know nothing happened if you can only perceive 1% of 1% around you? Right. So it's all tied in. It's all frequency and so forth. And love is the highest frequency. And if you're a kind, heart-centered individual and you recognize that all life is sacred, that whatever I do to anyone else, I do to myself, because we're all connected on the highest levels, you're going to attract goodness and good fortune and like-minded people. So good people around you. And if you're hateful and negative and cruel and judgmental and egoic and vicious and vengeful and all the other negative emotions, fearful, you're going to do what? You're going to push away all of the people that can bring goodness or good fortune in your life, and you're going to attract the same types of people. And it's all electromagnetic attraction. So that's why people do get involved with the wrong group of people. So as they say, sure, they're bringing in all the worst aspects of people versus bringing in the goodness. So I know this has jumped all over the place, but with the regard to the energy from meters and things like that, how can a physical or a electronics box pick up all there is to pick up? Just like how can we perceive anything less than 1% of 1% and then rely on our perceptions? I think it's not possible to really pick up everything that you think you're going to pick up. And it's hard to read those things. And I've never relied on objects. I believe that we are all our own instruments. And if we focus and try to build our own sensitivities up, for instance, clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience or empathy or any of these types of extrasensory perceptions, as they call them, and you devote the time into trying to expand those and to perfect them. And in my case, as Lorraine said, just being involved in situations where there are haunting situations going on, where there are definitely spirits present, your own antennae are picking those things up more and more clearly, and you get a more clear picture of what is going on through whatever means your psychic awareness is allowing that to happen. And it's all related to the pineal gland. And it's always been called the seat of the soul, or the third eye, or the sixth sense. It's got rods and cones just like the physical eyes do. It's photosensitive just like the physical eyes are. And that's why children by and large, are able to perceive spirits and have imaginary playmates and can do all of these things until the time comes where the parents say, it's time to grow up, young lady. We don't see these things, and stop playing with your imaginary playmates. They aren't real. To the children, they're real, of course. I never remembered having a imaginary playmate, but I did see lights in my room at one point when I was young, around 8. But the pineal gland is what is so vitally important, and that's it all goes back to the Eye of Horus, and that's what that was all about. The ancients knew the importance of the pineal gland. If you go back to the Sumerian texts, the clay tablets, you'll see the birdmen or the watchers holding the pine cone, and holding it out. And there's a lot of pine cone symbology throughout ancient history, but the pineal gland gets calcified through fluoride. And that's why they being the people who want to keep us under control, the same people that are presenting all these, religions on us, versus a spirituality, which I don't need an organized religion or a church to go into, or a building or a group of people to express my own connection to my creator. I can do it by myself. I can go sit on a hilltop. Going by myself and sitting on a sunny hilltop by a tree and closing my eyes and stilling my mind and connecting with my creator means much more to the creator, who is just the observer, by the way, not the judge, in my mind, in my experience, means so much more than being dragged by the earlobe into a building to recite prayers that you don't even understand, much less mean. You know what I mean? So that's the breakthrough I had. I'm
sorry. Go on, Jason. I'm sorry. Finish.
Who knows where I was jumping all over the place, but
I'm sorry. But no, you sound like you might be Catholic, if if you remember.
I think that's more control, and that's more. It's more putting yourself as the little me, poor me, less than, by saying there's some hierarchy that you don't have. You have to go to work, right? That's all incorrect as far as I'm concerned. We are fields of awareness. We create our own reality here based on our own thoughts, but not just our thoughts or our intentions. It's the emotion or energy in motion you're putting behind those intentions and prayers. Oh, I hope I win the lottery. I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket. Well, you're not going to win the lottery, right? I sure hope I get a new job. You feel the emotion. I visualize getting this new job or this new opportunity, and visualize shaking hands with this individual and feeling the excitement, right, of having that fulfilled. That's how these things manifest, right? That's magic, and that was revealed in the book The Secret and everything, which makes a lot of sense, right? And one thing really did happen to me that was totally profound when I applied that, and not much else since, but maybe I just didn't apply it enough. But it's everything. Your emotion and your intention has to be, your intentions have to be tied into the emotion of seeing that whatever it is you desired fulfilled already taking place. Not, I sure wish, right. I wish, right?
And like I was just saying, it's creative visualization or realization, and that's magic. You on a mental level, you see it on a mental level, you experience, your mental attachment experiences it, and then it's manifested through astral, etheric, and down into physical reality. But I just want to say, and when it works, when people can see things that are going to happen, that's, divination, because they're seeing things that have already happened, imprinted on the mental or the astral. But you are so right. I just want to say that I'm glad to hear somebody say that, just say what you have said, because there is, I've had this long journey through Catholicism myself. And in fact, through occultism, that actually brought me back to a real Catholicism, which is like the pre-ecumenical, Tridentine, medieval, like the Jerusalem Catholicism that became the Church of Rome. And there's only one God, the supernal creator outside what you're talking about. And the only one time that it manifested in here, although we are parts of it, the spirit is parts of it, this is my view, it's Christ. Who came in, because I've often turned around and I've said, people say, oh, God, God this. I said, well, who do you think we're going to be fighting who do you think Jesus is going to have to come back and fight in here at the at Apocalypse, at Armageddon? Who do you think is going to be doing this stuff to the world? It's Yahweh. It's the Jewish God that is stuck in here with us, who thinks he's the only God, the all that is, when really the all that is outside. So, I mean, it just blows people's mind. When I tell them,
for 1 second?
Yeah, come. I want to know what I'm getting to is, how do you feel about Christ then, having worked so closely with the Warrens, who are very, devoted Catholics? Absolutely. How do you feel about it?
Well, I feel the Christ consciousness, which is what we all have to aspire for too. All right. And, the things that we're taught that are totally overlooked are when he's trying to teach the disciples that they will be able to heal just like he can heal. They can walk on water just like he can walk on water. Get out of the boat and walk on water. Oh, I can't possibly do that. I'm telling you can, right? These things and more ye shall do also. How can we do that if we're not the Son of God? We're all the sons of God. We're all the sons of the Creator, the transcendent God. And I believe he was the messenger that came here to right the wrongs that were being perpetrated on this population that was completely hoodwinked into this control grid, right? Which is all goes back to the Archon Matrix. I mean, the whole Matrix movies came directly from the Nag Hammadi text, which is what the Gnostics described back in the 2nd century. And they basically took psychoactive potions like herbal teas and things like that, and maybe psychedelics like mushrooms or whatever it was. But they were very serious about expanding their awareness outside of this reality that we are all presented with. And they saw very clearly the force that was controlling it, right? And it wasn't anything good. So the thing that always makes me crack up is this whole, and it is described as the Lord Archon, right? So anything the Lord, anything that says Lord in it is related to this. And anything that is associated with organized religion is all this same force. So it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist or you're an Orthodox Jew or any of this stuff. If you are placing your power in this ruthless, judgmental, jealous, controlling, manipulative force, they're all one and the same. And that's what the Gnostics said. You have to go beyond that and understand that our true creator, which is where we originate from and where we shall return to, which is the whole purpose of my book, is to basically say, I choose to return to my creator, to my source, to the transcendent God. Come and retrieve me. I choose, to return there. Going through the light might be the trap. That might be the bug zapper that zaps our memories and thrusts us back into this cycle of reincarnation, which is, even Jesus talked about the reincarnation aspect, right? So that's why I changed the name of my book from Our Journey Home, Guiding Spirits into the Light to the Handbook for the Transition, because my purpose is to bypass that whole light and say, I choose, before I even leave my body, as I'm in the hospital or in my bedroom, and I say to myself over and over, should my body fail, my soul essence shall return directly to the Creator, make a beeline for the Creator. And you can summon and ask for, help like the archangels and so forth. But that's a whole interesting thing. Placing your power in something else, right? We are sovereign, and to be confronted by something on our deathbed that will take the form of a religious figurehead or of a parent or a coach or anybody, a lover, a husband or wife or child who demands or trying to coerce you through threat or duress to come with them immediately and to go through that light or go through that door or go through that window. You have to be very cautious about placing your power and your trust in anybody else. You call upon the power of your Creator to come and retrieve you, and only your power. That's the only being that we owe our allegiance to. And I think we've all been hoodwinked through all these world religions and so forth, and placing our power in other forces. But to get back to the whole satanic element, these demonic entities, right? They will always fail. They will never be victorious over calling upon the power of the Creator to expel these interlopers from the lives of the people who are oppressed. And it's folly for these beings to believe that the created, right, regardless of how powerful they assume themselves to be, can overpower the creator or the creator's will. So every single time we've ever encountered these beings, even though they've wreaked havoc in people's lives and homes, they're always expelled because you have the absolute faith that the creator will expel them and free these people from the tyrannical infestation and oppression and even possession scenarios. They always lose. So why would you even bother?
Absolutely.
And
then people,
so well known.
Go on. I'm sorry. Yeah, go on. No, go on. I know they were known for their faith. Yeah. No, go on.
I go on all these tangents, but
that's fine. I love it.
A case that I just did in New York. I was going to be attending the Paranormal SuperCon in Ohio. This was first weekend in November, and I got wind of a case up in upstate New York, and it involved two young girls, and there being all kinds of stuff happening. So I told Rob Zarek, the promoter of the event, that I couldn't make it. I had to do this case, but it was so intense from what I heard from the family and from their family's friend that I called Bishop Long and requested him to join me to handle the religious aspect. And he couldn't make it, so I had Bill Bean come. He agreed to come up, and he's a spiritual warrior of the finest order, and an amazing man. So we took care of this case literally overnight, and we finished each other's sentences, and we did all the right things all at the right time, and checked each other and so forth, and we really worked great as a team. But we went up there absolutely convinced, right, before we even set foot on the property, and as we told the owner of the home, said, be absolutely certain of this one thing, right? And he's looking at us with his eyes widely drawn. He says, this ends tonight. These forces will be expelled. Peace shall once again come onto this property and in this family, and peace shall remain, as Bill likes to say. But I mean, we did all the right things, and it's your intention, right? And I don't care about photographs or EVPs or any of that stuff as far as recognition or any kind of, I got something, I got something on a photo, because you really don't know what it is. But the purpose, and my only purpose, is to free families from these negative forces and to help people cross over properly and to help people lose their fear of leaving their body, because we're all going to do it, and to try to prevent hauntings from happening in the first place, right? Prevent people from remaining electromagnetically bound to their former surroundings, their former homes, their former, the people they interacted with and the circumstances of their lives. All of these things that you associate with yourself as being you or part of you are just part of this aspect of your experience, right? And it's none of it matters in the end. And it's all just part of the experience. So you want to intend to just return home to source. You don't need to remain here. And like I was saying earlier, people, and from the YouTube video, like Ed always said, he said, if this building collapsed during one of his college lectures, a good number of people would not cross over properly. They'd be remaining here earthbound because it happened so fast they don't even realize they're dead. So it tells you right there that, and Ed always said, he says, what we've been taught in the Catholic faith, even though we're devout Catholics, about how we're all going to sleep until Christ returns, just is not accurate. We absolutely survive the death of the physical body. And sometimes it happens so we don't even know we've died, because nobody in the history of the earth has ever died. We've simply just changed form back into our formless awareness state. And the orbs, which are fascinating, is if you go to my website, McLeod Metaphysics, I've got this great website with all these blue orbs flying all over the place, but that's really what we are, is a condensed packet of energy,
and they love to discredit orbs now. People just don't like orbs when all of a sudden it was orbs. But we're down to like about 5 minutes or 4 minutes here. I was just going to say, we have a break at 10:30 if you want to hang out after that. I mean, if you want to hang out and then come join us, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had a scratchy throat there. What I was wanted to add to that, excuse me, is people who approach the Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic system and the Jewish mysticism, and they look at the peels. They look at the reverse or the averse of the tree of life, and that's where the demons, the iniquitous ones, the great demons, exist on the averse, and there's the path to them through, the center through the Da'at. And so we have God, the creator, and the Jewish belief was that when he emanated, the Jewish belief, okay, that when he emanated into this reality, some spheres that were holding him, spiritual spheres, broke, and those shredded ones, those broken ones, are on the adverse side as demons. And this is what I talk to people about when they say you're calling everything a demon. When you're calling, you got devils and demon, and there's different, but everybody wants it's a demon, it's a demon. I call a demon those things, the clipot, and those are pieces of God, of this God, of the OT God, right? And if those are pieces of him cast off, and we're in here with him, right? Then who's really God? Who's God? Because the bad part of his personality exists in this cosmos, in this reality, and it's there for a purpose. Just like people say, well, why does God let demons exist? Why does God let devils exist? Because they serve a purpose in this reality. And it comes, there's, in the Gnostic, you're talking about the Gnostic, but the really sort of like the culmination is, I know that Christ came in to free our spirits from the physicality and the lowest vibration, and the soul learns what it does and it returns to the supernal one. But once he was in here, a lot of people say, the Catholics will tell you, he was a divinity from the beginning. I don't think so. I think that when he accepted the mission, or when he got older, the supernal actually illuminated him and came into him. I think he kind of suspected, but a lot of people have speculated, well, what about him going into the desert and Satan tempting him? And people freak out when I say, didn't they call Lucifer the light bringer? And you know what? I said, I think he filled him in, really. I mean, I'm not advocating for Lucifer, but I think he sat there and said, look, here's the deal, and if you say yes, this is going to happen. But if you say yes, you'll get them out of here. We're stuck in here with them too, but you'll get the spirits out of here. And I mean, it's that simple. So, with the authority of Christ, because Christ is God, he is the God. So, people want to argue with me and all this other stuff and try. And I'm like, that God in the Bible, except for a few books like the prophets, and the gospel and the revelation, all that belongs to the Jews. That's their God, because that's also Allah, this terrible, horrible God of the terrible Muslims. That's him too. And I don't know how people can say, oh, he's so wonderful. He's not, and he doesn't intend us anything good, So your idea about not going into the tunnel or not going into the light is actually, that is the first time I've thought of that. So I appreciate that. And I had no idea. You can go off on as many tangents as you want, because you're in here with, I agree with you, let me see. I don't know if Joe can hear us. Are we taking a break now, Joe? Do you want to stay, Jason, or if you have to go, we can. Okay. It'll just be like another 15 minutes or so after we take a break. But anyway, we'll talk until he tells me we're going to go. So
while we're heading the break, I assume it's going to be commercials and things like that for people on the show. But if people want to go to my websites, the new one is McLeodmetaphysics.com, is McLeodmetaphysics.com. And the other website is Darksiege, DARKSIEGE.com. And those are my, I call myself a double agent when I wrote those books, because I'll go to these horror conventions and the terror conventions and the paranormal conventions and present this absolutely terrifying ordeal that this family endured, for the purpose of people getting to the analysis section at the end, which is full of all the empowering information to help you understand why these things happen, how you can make sure they don't happen to you, and if they do, what you can do about it and what not to do, absolutely. But how love conquers darkness, and how we are, absolutely much more protected and much more powerful than we believe we are, as long as we believe we are, and we understand our connection to our Creator, which is why I've never been attacked, and people all around me have been attacked in severe cases and so forth. So That's great
Okay,
information
well, hang
on those
on,
sites.
Jason. Joe
Yeah.
showed up, and we're going to give him again in a few minutes. He said it's time for us to go to break. So we're going to do that. You're listening to the Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network. We'll be back shortly with Jason McLeod. We're back. The Joe man. He's, I don't know, his wife caught up with him. You're listening to the Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network. I'm Aline Pastadio. My co-host Bernadine LeBlanc is here, and we are talking to Jason McLeod, and he's graciously agreed to spend another 10 or 15 minutes with. And I know that, Jason, that Bernadine has some other question, and Shane will not walk in. I promise you. Shane is not going to walk in. So go on, Dean. I wanted to get you in here on the discussion.
I wanted to know what you think about spirit attachments.
I think that we are surrounded by spirits, but like I said earlier, we can only see less than 1% of 1% that is around us. So spirits are attracted to us based on our physical appearance, the color of our aura, the sound of our voice. The other entities or angels or forces that are around us. But it's very easy if we don't have our guard up and if we don't really know how to protect ourselves, how we can get attachments. And they can stay with us, from our early childhood all the way throughout our adult lives, or come and go just like friends come or go. But interestingly enough, I've taken pranic healing. I'm a massage therapist and I'm a Reiki healer. I was also taken pranic healing, and we have cords connected to us, which is, quantum entanglement. We're connected to so many people, we wouldn't even be able to believe it until they're all released, and how you feel when they're all done and removed. But simply looking at somebody affectionately or feeling that somebody is attractive will cord to them. We're talking physical on physical. But the same thing with spirits. We can be connected. Many spirits can be taking energy from our many fields. We can be supplying them with energy without even knowing it. There's psychic vampires that just intend to latch on and drain you of your energy because they know how, and nobody is walking around that is protected. And what's fascinating is the white light that the Warrens always talked about, that you hear a lot of these, people talking about as Christ lighting yourself or white lighting yourself. They really don't do it properly and really seal themselves off from all directions, both below our feet and above our head and behind ourselves. And I found out that was the case with many people, and even including myself. If you're not fully protected and you're not shielded and you're not intending and calling upon the protection of Metatron, for instance, or Sandalphon or Michael or, Raphael or Gabriel or Uriel, as an angelic form for protection, and you're not focusing on those things, you're totally vulnerable and totally protected. And we can pick these things up all the time.
These are kind of like links to people. What about the soul group? Have you ever heard of the soul group?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think we're connected, and not only are we connected with our highest aspects of ourselves, but also all the other aspects of ourselves, which could be experiencing parallel lives and parallel realities, different lifetimes. I've heard and studied that things that we believe to be past lives could actually be current parallel lives in different timelines. Since there's nothing that's physical. So people have to just get out of the whole Newtonian physics model that, we're in a solid reality and this is it, and we're it and that's it. So if God can divide itself, I don't want to use gender because there's no gender obviously in the spirit form. If God can divide an aspect of itself innumerable times, and if angelic beings can divide, here's another mind bender actually. And so what's to say that we can't, and we don't divide ourselves into multiple timelines and multiple aspects to make better use of our existence in simultaneous lessons. I have a friend named Bill Hanna, and he's actually able to see angelic forms. That's all you can see, but he describes them completely. And he was with me on a case here in Austin, Texas. But I had him see what happens when I say, "Thank you, Archangel Michael, for being here now," right? And for taking out your sword and for cutting away any connections I have with any spirits that have attached to me. And thank you for being with my friends and family now and for guarding and shield them. It was the millisecond that I said that, he saw this one angel, and they all have these medallions on. he describes them as. But he saw the one angel literally divide itself like a hologram would be divided into perfected smaller versions of itself, and literally just go scatter all over the place. So, you know, you hear these stories about, oh, well, I was, you know, Joan of Arc, or I was, you know, Louis the 14th, or I was, you know, whatever in the past life. Well, that's another aspect, that we could all be experiencing anything we choose to experience because we seek that, our soul seeks that experience. But how can, you know, Archangel Gabriel be watching after me, which is what every psychic I've ever been to says it's always Gabriel. Now it's Michael, and now it's actually Metatron. But you watching after me, and also, you know, 100 million other people. You know,
right. I've always thought that too. I'm like, how, you know, when you pray to them, you have other people praying to them at the same time, I'm sure.
Exactly. Oh, you know what really makes me laugh is, the only sport I watch is professional football, and I'm a New England Patriots fan because I'm from Connecticut. But you see all the players, right, blessing themselves, making the sign of cross, and when they get a great play, they look up to God and point up to God and say, "Thank you, God, for helping me get that play." Well, you think God is actually watching after you to make that play versus all the other teammates on the other team who are equally praying as much.
Right.
It's just so funny. You know, God's the observer. You know what I mean?
He's taking sides today.
He is the observer.
Thank you for helping me make that touchdown and glorifying myself at the same time. You know, crushing the other guy.
I want to see Christopher Walken in the role of God. I want to see Christopher Walken. Yes, you know. Christopher Walken would make a great God in that. Looking, you know, like the whole thing, the whole world to him or to it is an auditorium or a stadium or whatever. I mean, the Catholics used to say God is everywhere all at once, you know, and it's omnipresence, and you're not supposed to understand it, you know, and all this other stuff. But it's true. It's omnipresent. So if you begin to think like you're describing, you know, like of the fragmentation or, you know, the parceling out of his power, you can just, your mind will implode. You know, I mean, seriously, you know, it's like John Greer said in the book, and I've repeated it. It's when you see these people with these bumper stickers that say, "Don't drive faster than your guardian angel can fly." You know, it's like, right. in a nanosecond thought, they're on the other side of the universe, right? And they're everywhere at all the time. So it's people with the little cherubs and the wings and all, and they forget angels are nothing like that. And all you got to do is read in the Bible, really, on the descriptions of when they encountered some of these angelic beings. I wish we had like another hour with you to talk about that kind of stuff, like the angels serving. What?
I want to read you one page from my book. See the book?
Okay, good. We're at 5 minutes. Right.
Okay, it's just a passage. The Art Journey Home book, the last section is the affirmations and inspirational messages on these beautiful vortex images. But they're full of things that affirmations and inspirational messages that I intend for people to cut out and frame or put on their bedside or near somebody who's about to transition and so forth. But this is one of my favorite quotes that I wrote myself. And it says, "Prime Creator can be likened to the brilliant, glorious, radiant sun, whose rays are evenly distributed throughout all of creation. The sun itself and its rays are one and the same, all parts being equal. They extend through and over, permeate and penetrate, energize and illuminate all of creation. There's no way to be apart from it, for Prime Creator is anywhere and everywhere throughout creation, all at once and forever." So that was one of my favorite things.
Excellent.
I put in there.
I'm gonna. I've already pulled up your book on Amazon. I think I'm gonna buy the Kindle version tonight and start reading. So, will you come back and visit with us? Yeah, I know during the break. I did it while he was talking. I'd love to have you back to talk about the Watchers, the Fallen, the Sumerian stuff, and all. I would love to do a show on that with you. So we'll. There's my cat. My cat knocking over stuff. But it's been so great having you, Jason. So we're looking forward to it in the future. Why don't you give your website and the book's website as well as your main website where people can go and find out more and buy your books?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on the show, and I really enjoyed listening to your perspectives and about the Kabbalah and all that stuff too. And I think, you know, it's so nice to connect with the other like-minded people who are what I call awake and aware to the higher possibilities and the expanded, you know, consciousness. But my website is McLeod Metaphysics, so it's McLeodMetaphysics.com, and that's where my new book is located. And I actually have lots of examples of what the pages are like and so forth, because it's a beautiful large print book, 8.5 by 11, meant for, you know, elderly people, but also meant for everybody else. And it's loaded with full color illustrations, over 50 of them. And the other website for my first two books that I released starting in 2012 and 2014 is www.darksiege.com. And though the case is absolutely terrifying, it's absolutely empowering at the end through the analysis section to help people understand why these things happen and how they happen. In my experiences working with ed-lorraine-warren, and how love conquers darkness, and how, you know, to really understand these things and make sure they don't happen to you. And that's why I wrote them, is because of all these paranormal groups out there claiming to know what they're doing, and people using Ouija boards inside people's homes, and, you know, not having the intention to resolve a case and to help the family versus gaining recognition for themselves and so forth. So that's my purpose, is to warn teenagers about Ouija board use against them, and explain how they work, and this nature of reality, which is what I really go into in the Our Journey Home book. I touched on it in the Dark Siege books, but I'm really excited about it. And I have several other books I'm writing concurrently, actually, simultaneously. So I really appreciate the Kindle downloads. I'm actually really close to a #1 bestseller. And
good.
Again, and
I am going to download it as soon as I get off, and I'm going to start reading it. And I just want you to know, if we put together anything here in town or on the coast, we're going to ask you to come and speak. So, but we,
that would be wonderful.
Finally, so, I mean, I like hide from people sometimes to say, oh, you know, that's when you start talking Gnostic stuff to them, they get like freaked out and all, but it's the only way that makes sense, you know. But anyway, let me let you go, because we have Kathy Bilski waiting in the wings to come on. Thank you so much, Jason, right. And have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Night, and let me know what you think of the book. All right, bye-bye.
I sure will. Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, we could talk to him for 3 or 4 hours. That'd be great. So we got to scoot right out of here because we're right up against a hard break. Kathy Bilski and Quantum Leap is up next. So stay tuned. Stick around for 2 a.m. Well, tonight we're eating angel meat on Terminus, Dark Ambient Radio. Remember, we are an iHeart partner. We have a guest next week. I don't know who it's going to be, but we'll be here. Bernadine LeBlanc. You can find us all on Facebook, Google us online, find me everywhere, and find her everywhere. And buy my books too. I'm coming out with a new one soon. So good night. Have a great weekend. And the only thing about Mighty Girl that's good is the music. So Joe, I hope you queued it up. Hey, Pocky Way. Good night.
Night, night.
Some choices are hard, like should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Oh, what a great audience. Let's dim the lights for this next one. Nope, too much. Ah, there it is. Gotta get things just right. Like Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Tell us what you want to pay, and we help you find coverage options that fit your budget. And now, the mood is right. Wait, the lights are back on again. Trudy, can you? And now it's completely dark.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.